I'd like to call this Monday, June 7th, Sonora City Council meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. And roll call, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Here.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
Here.
And Councilmember Such?
Here.
All five of us are here. Okay. Before we adjourn into closed session, looking for public comments on public employee performance evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, City Administrator. Do we have anybody that would like to raise their hand? I don't see anybody.
Sorry, sir, I can't see public comments on my end.
It's cool. I don't see any hands, so we will adjourn into closed session.
I wonder if poor Sandra Sturzenknocker knows that the other meeting starts at 5.
I see we have one member of the public. Sandra, we will be meeting at 5 in open session. Huh, now she knows.
Hey Jim, would you do me a huge favor? Let's scoot these down a bit because nobody can see me. So it's like talking head with no person to see. That's a little bit better. There we go.
Okay, so
We don't record.
I would like to call the Monday, June 7th, Sonora City Council regular meeting at 5:07 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Garaventa.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Garaventa. Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Here.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
Here.
And Councilmember Such?
Here.
Sorry, you threw me off there, Councilmember Garaventa.
Excellent. All five of us are here. City Clerk's report on agenda posting. One of y'all posted the agenda, I know it.
I just want to verify because I was actually out of town at the time, but I believe the agenda was posted on Thursday at 2 p.m. So Thursday, June 3rd at 2 p.m. I apologize for that.
Okay, and approval of the agenda. Does anyone have anything you want to pull, rearrange? Okay. Presentations. Receive a Tuolumne County update from District 1 Supervisor Dave Goldenberg. This is a regular thing and I really like it.
Hey, good evening, everyone, or late afternoon as it may be. So as usual, I start off with just a brief update on COVID issues, and hopefully we will not be having these updates too much longer, right? Things are looking good. They did have a few more cases over the weekend and today, a total of 4. There is one more person in the hospital. So please, let's keep them in our thoughts. The orange tier that we're in, we're basically going to be there through June 15th, and we'll see what happens with the governor as far as what restrictions or not are released at that point. There's a little bit unknowns. They're still conducting lots of vaccine pods. Public Health in today's report actually put out that they're going to have one on June 10th, 14th, 16th, and 18th. And kind of a mix between Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna. So yeah, we do encourage people to keep getting vaccinated. It's really important. County budget, as is with the city, right? We're all going through the budget, figuring out where we're going in this next, closing out this fiscal year and going into next fiscal year. So the county, we've had a couple of budget discussions. On May 18th, we showed that we were approximately $1.6 million on the low end, right? We were shy that amount. By the time we got to a June 1st meeting, we had more information. And so information is an ever evolving thing. And we don't always have the details from meeting to meeting, so that's understandable. When we get to June 1st, we saw that one of the big areas was TOT funds. They had increased, as far as we could see on the amounts, $1.4 million. So that was a huge thing to see that was coming. So based on that, our board met and we discussed the funds that we had, the projected funds, and we took kind of a mixed approach. We looked at wanting to restore some of the positions that had been eliminated in the past, including the last couple of fiscal years. There was a number of layoffs. And so some of the departments were really hurting, even in their basic needs, just having somebody to be able to answer the telephone. So we're trying to restore those, yet we want to also keep enough funds back that as we move forward, we have a better idea before we make final decisions. As with the city, we have to present a budget by June 15th, but our final budget is not really recognized and done until mid-August to late August, even early September. So we look at that and, we want to hold on to, some funds until we understand exactly where we're at, because we don't want to put ourselves in the precarious position of being too short and then having to take back something that we're offering. A lot of discussion about the American Rescue Fund, plan funds. The county did get roughly $5.3 million transferred. Came along with a 150-page document. And that document was created by the Department of Treasury. So we know how easy it is to figure out how to understand our taxes. So as you can imagine, pretty complicated. If that wasn't enough, they refer us to about another 400-page document if we have questions. So, it's difficult to understand, but we're looking at that and trying to sort it out. So we have not really yet met and made any commitments on how we're going to do, spend those funds, except we're looking at one area in our CDD department in code enforcement, is that we need to do something about all the trash in Tuolumne County. So we, as a board, we authorize that some of those funds, a small amount of them, be used to try and attack that situation. Other than that, Recreation Department, they're largely getting up and running. Things are looking good. We're having problems getting enough applicants and enough workers. So if you know of anybody personally that would be willing to look at, they need some summertime employment, we would gladly accept their applications. Unfortunately, right, with all the relief packages between the state and the federal government, a lot of people were making more money than they actually were working. And so the incentives, weren't there. I said unfortunately, but that's not really the case, right? We needed these programs to get through COVID, but now it's time to get out of COVID and move forward. I'd like to kind of close with just a plea for Tuolumne County Arts, right? We need to establish, the county is working on establishing, trying to figure out how to get there on a long-term budget, a line item budget. We're talking about an amount of roughly $50,000. The Arts Council is looking for a new home. Their current home is decent, but it's not near as robust as it should be. This is something that I feel that the county and the city could work together on. I think we could jointly come up and look at efforts to increase that presence. A vibrant arts community, in downtown Sonora certainly helps the city, definitely helps the county as well. And so anything we can do to work on that together, would be fantastic. Other than that, my website, supervisordavidgoldenberg.com, is out there. Can schedule appointments with me, and I'll take any questions from the council.
Do any of the council members have any questions for Supervisor Goldenberg? Okay, so
I would add that
Mr.
I
Mayor Pro Tem?
applaud his call to work together on that and anything else. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about some of our new supervisors.
I hope you heard that, Dave.
I did, thank you.
So Dave, I'll just make a statement. We'll get together here real soon and discuss the Arts Council thing that you were
Okay.
just discussing.
Great.
And then that way you and I can step out here and then we can see where we can move forward at.
Would love to do so. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for keeping your word and putting your district first. I do appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good meeting.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, on to public comment on non-agenda items. The public may address the council on any item of public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Again, this is for non-agenda items.
If you have a comment for public, a public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're on a phone line. And it looks like your first public comment is from Bobby.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right, first of all, I just want to say thank you for your time and being someone who has been quietly listening to these meetings to stay updated on things in our community. There were some things that caught my attention and I couldn't let them go. So Mayor Hawkins, I would like to take my time to address you and the things that you have said in the past on record while acting as mayor. I've heard you target a specific church, and I don't know who specifically you're talking about, and I don't need to know who they are. But as a citizen of Sonora, I can't sit back and watch you verbally attack people from your seat as mayor. You have said, and I quote, "I have never seen people in church treat others as poorly as the way these people have treated these people. And I know that if I went there, I'd be turned out immediately," end quote. I feel you are not being courteous at all and are in fact discriminating not just citizens, but people of religion. You have used your position to retaliate and fight fire with fire. And I also quote, "People have made it personal, so I decided to give it back and people got offended," end quote. I have seen you abuse your position of power and don't appreciate you using your seat as mayor to discriminate against people of faith groups in our community. According to Sonora City Council Code of Ethics, Section 1 states, "Be dedicated to the concept of delivering effective and efficient city services in a courteous and non-discriminatory manner." And also Section 9, "Strive for fairness and impartiality in dealing with each other and with members and citizenry and press." So I challenge you, Sonora City Council members, to keep each other accountable and talk with Mayor Hawkins about what is and is not appropriate to say on record to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the public's knowledge, I am not allowed by law to respond to anything. So I would, but I can't. So
Your next public speaker is from the Sonora Chamber of Commerce.
I bet this is Katie Dunn.
Why, yes, it is. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Katie Dunn, President of the Sonora Chamber of Commerce. I have a couple of things I want to share with you tonight. This coming Saturday is our first concert in Confield Park, and it starts at 8 and goes till 10. We are all ready to go. With Clan Dyken is our first band of the season, so I'm very, very excited about that. The other thing I wanted to share with you is our Sonora Young Professionals group. The Sonora Young Professionals is a program of the Sonora Chamber of Commerce. And the goal is to unite like-minded young professionals and empower them to connect with the community. A couple years ago, Tiffany Phillips was the one who started and led the group until COVID hit. And then earlier this year, Jay Pink joined our board of directors and is now leading the group. They have already had one event, but their second event is June 22nd. It is at Cervini Saloon. It's their meetup. And the details are Marianne Wright, who owns Cervini's, and Tar Flat Fine Goods. She's also a fifth generation Sonoran, and she's going to share her experience and vision for young professionals and future community leaders. And there's also going to be live music by the local singer-songwriter, Nicholas Leffler. And that is from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. on June 22nd at Cervini's. So I wanted to share that with you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Katie.
Your next public speaker is from the last four digits, 1626. If you're on a phone line, 1626, please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Go ahead, 1626. We are listening.
You have to mute him, Chris. Okay. Please dial *6 if your last four digits on your phone line is 1626 to unmute yourself.
All you have to do is hit *6. Okay. Give it 5 more seconds. Thank you, Mr. Gorski. Asked to unmute. Okay, maybe we can come back to 1626.
Looks like there is an additional public speaker from John Fonseca. Fonseca.
Go ahead, John Fonseca.
Yes. Hello. First of all, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity and for the work that you do. My name is John Fonseca. I'm a homeowner here in Sonora. And I just did want to address the transit use of residential properties and the application process. I am coming up to speed to the generalities around it in terms of, I just want to indicate we recognize the challenges that are involved with regard to obviously the housing issues involved, the impacts on the community, both on perhaps the more challenging side of the equation and the positives for businesses in town and things of that nature. And then lastly, just in particular to address the fact that we understand that there are perhaps challenges around investors who may want to use properties for that purpose. So my general comment would be to, first of all, I have been in touch with your offices in terms of trying to get more information as to where this conversation is, and I would like to perhaps learn more about that conversation. But in any event, just to note that, as a homeowner who may be interested in this, that the modifications may be made to appropriately have local homeowners participate in the community in this way, both for the use of their own properties and in addition for the economic benefit. I mean, all the while, again, understanding the challenges, particularly with regard to housing. That's a community issue that we all need to collectively address. So in any event, I just wanted to say, that I'm hopeful to learn more about that, and I'll obviously go about that in my own investigation with your folks. What I mean is inquiring with the city. But if there's any way that one participate or otherwise assist in that process, I would be interested in learning more. So nevertheless, thank you for this opportunity and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Your next public speaker is from Lori.
Go ahead, Lori.
Hi, this is Lori from Tuolumne County Arts. I just wanted to tell you guys that this past Saturday, we had our plein air event, painting of the Red Church, and we had a handful of people out there painting, and they're all going to bring their paintings back this coming Saturday night for Second Saturday Art Night and for the summer months. A whole collection of Red Church paintings, some from George Post, some from Mr. Surendorf, and some from our local artists. And we even had people coming up from the valley for our plein air. So when you get a chance, stop into the gallery and take a look. We're going to be open now Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, 11 to 4 p.m. And hopefully we'll see you on second Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
At this time, Mr. Mayor, there is still that additional public comment from the phone line 1626. If you would like to see if he can.
Yeah. See if this individual
So again,
did not.
if you're on the phone line with the last four digits 1626, please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
All you have to do is hit *6. Well, okay,
But you do have an additional public speaker, Desiree Marsh.
oh, go ahead, Desiree.
Hello, thank you for listening to me tonight. I'd like to address the approval of the Bract House location from your last meeting. I'm concerned that the Sonora City Council and the Sonora City staff have been negligent in their responsibility, both ethically in your position of office and morally as human beings, to do your due diligence before approving this location. The ordinance the city has adopted states that cannabis dispensaries should not be located within 600 feet of a youth center that was in existence at the same time as the license was issued. The council has now voted to approve recreational use sales at this location within 200 feet of the facility, even though the Child and Family Visitation Center has been in operation for 4 years now and continues to operate. I understand that you relied on your city staff and legal counsel to do your due diligence for you, and I agree, you probably should have been able to rely on them to effectively do their job to their fullest. This city council voted based off City Administrator Mary Rose's word that she had no way of knowing what happens in the facility because they had not received a response after their 4 to 5 notices to the appropriate organizations. But you've all heard citizens of the public speak about this facility and what it does. I have personally told you it was a facility used for foster care children and struggling foster care families. You had every opportunity to hear the public and take the time to do the research for yourselves. As a matter of fact, this council has had 2 years to do so. So I decided to email the director of the Tuolumne County Child and Welfare Services myself to notify them of the Bract House location and the assertions that this council and its staff has made that they have done everything they could to reach out to the appropriate public organizations for a response. Would you like to know how quickly I received a response from the director of Tuolumne County CWS? Exactly 10 minutes. And the response from CWS states that they can confidently, and I quote, confidently and emphatically say that I was never contacted by the city council or any other organization to provide a comment or be able to share our concerns, which, by the way, they do have concerns, the people who operate this facility. It took me, a non-government official or staff member, all of 10 minutes to get a response from the organization that operates the visitation center. Sonora City Council, staff, and legal counsel, you have failed your ethical and moral responsibility to your positions,
7 seconds.
to your positions, your city, to the social workers who tirelessly run that facility, and most importantly, to the children who are mandated to use that facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree. Okay.
At this time, Mr. Mayor, I do not see any additional public comment.
Okay, we will move on to this consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or member of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. I'll read this one. Okay, approval of disbursements in the amount of $149,382.24 and $148,907.38 for payroll, inclusive of employee salaries, employer and employee taxes, and retirement contributions, miscellaneous voluntary employee deductions, holiday pay, and other adjustments. Any council member discussion on that? Okay, I guess we'll look for public comment. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
At this time, Mr. Mayor, I don't see any public comment.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to the council.
I will
Motion.
move to approve the consent calendar.
I second it.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Garaventa, second by Mayor Pro Tem Plummer. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Sagerstrom?
Aye.
And Councilmember Such?
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. Next to unfinished business. Consideration to accept a Cannabis Tax Fund Grant Program, CTFGP, award and approve associated budget adjustments to the police department's budget unit. Mary Rose.
Mr. Mayor, this item is actually coming from your police chief, and I'll let Police Chief Drew Vanderwill have.
Sorry, Chief
speak on
Vanderwill.
it.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Lieutenant Manuel is the one that put all the hard work into this project, so I'm going to have her present the report.
Very cool, thank you. Lieutenant.
How are you? Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and community members. The Sonora Police Department requests consideration to accept a Cannabis Tax Fund Grant Program Award and approve associated budget adjustments to the Police Department's budget unit. In February, authorization was given to apply for a Cannabis Tax Fund Grant Program and authorize the City Administrator to execute all documents related to the grant application. Direction was given for the Police Chief to return to the City Council with the application results and accept the award. This funding is allotted through the California Highway Patrol Cannabis Grants Unit. The purpose of this grant funding is to help the Sonora Police Department reduce and mitigate the impacts of impaired driving in our community. This tax fund grant is a result of Prop 64. In 2018, adult use and medical use marijuana businesses began opening in cities such as ours that choose to grant local cannabis license. There is substantial evidence that cannabis use increases the risk of motor vehicle crashes due to DUI and is a significant concern for law enforcement and public safety. The police department will utilize these funds to augment training and education, equipment needs, and overtime and administrative costs. The funding is for a 24-month grant cycle, and financial expenditures are reimbursed quarterly during the fiscal year.
And just a reminder that the actual budget adjustment requires a 4/5 vote.
Okay.
And I can answer any questions that you have in regards to this grant.
The council have questions? So my big question, because I know I'll get this from the public, is what will we be using this money for?
So it'll train the officers into recognizing driving under the influence and impairment. It'll also be used for a message board to put out messages in regards to cannabis use, alcohol use. It will also allow our officers to go out on added patrol for driving under the influence violations.
I thank you for going after this so hard. I know one of the complaints I had heard from pretty much any police officer, and this goes back at least 20 years, is that it is hard to tell when somebody is under the influence of marijuana, cannabis, that sort of thing. So hopefully this extra training will help out.
Yeah, there's a lot of different training that's come a long ways back, what you speak about, that has been able to give us the ability to differentiate between the two.
Excellent. Okay, so none of the council members have any questions. We'll move to any public comment on this item.
This time, if you have any public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, or *9 if you are on a phone line. And at this time, council members, I do not see any public comment.
Okay, so we will bring it back to the council unless anyone has any questions or comments about it. I think this is exciting. This is really good. This has been one of the biggest, like I said, the complaints I even hear from our officers and sheriff's department with training and that sort of thing. And our police department does such a good job. So thank you. Thank you.
And it's hard sometimes.
Yeah,
So-
really hard.
I move to accept the Cannabis Tax Fund Grant Program Award and approve associated budget adjustments to the police department's budget unit.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Plummer, second by Councilmember Garaventa. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer,
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa,
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom,
Aye.
and Councilmember Sutch.
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. Great job. Yay. Okay, on to new business. Consideration to approve the acquisition of the real property located at 243 South Washington Street, APN number 002-151-010 in the amount of $126,900. Oh, and there's no cents on it. Okay. And authorize the city administrator to sign and finalize all documents associated with the purchase.
Mr. Mayor and council members, the item before you is asking approval to purchase a piece of property located on the southeast corner of South Washington Street and Church Street. The site of that property was a gas station for many years, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, and it was owned by the Union Oil Company of California. The gas station was eventually demolished and began the required environmental monitoring and cleanup of that site. Throughout the years, that lot had become a vacant eyesore. And in 1998, the city of Sonora entered into a lease agreement with the company to use the site for a parking lot. Since that time, the city of Sonora have leased that parking lot space from Union Oil Company of California. The environmental cleanup is now officially complete, and that environmental document is attached from the Water Control Board to your agenda packet. And the company has approached the city of Sonora to purchase that parking lot. We have entered into negotiations for a price, and we are asking to purchase that piece of property for $126,900. The purchase and sale agreement is attached to the document, so is the vesting deed. There's actually a really cool old vesting deed attached to the document that you can see. And then, like I stated before, the Central Valley Regional Control Board, no further action letter is also attached for your review. If you have any questions concerning the historical, as the history relates to that property, Rochelle Kellogg is here to answer any questions in regards to that.
So Rochelle, if I can put you on the spot, if you could come up for a moment. I think I was on the council at the time when they were digging up that lot, close to 10 years ago, where they went down 3 or 5 feet and cleaned up.
Right. They've done several environmental cleanups on that over the years. As part of our lease agreement, they had to have full access. So there was times where they would have barrels in there to do the cleanup from the water table. And then they had other times when they actually did soil removal. And then they worked in the surrounding properties as well. So yeah, over the years, there has been a lot of environmental cleanup done on that site.
So that piece of property now, it started out as Union Oil, I guess, but now it's owned by Chevron, correct?
Chevron acquired Union Oil,
Yes.
but the property still shows as Union Oil of California.
What's some history there? That is cool.
Yeah.
So I think, I guess Chevron, for the sheer fact that they went in and cleaned up a mess, and I know it was a mess. And now
And thanks to the city for leasing it and putting a parking lot on top of it, because
Yes.
it was a very big eyesore. We did all the iron doors and everything to move the fountain lot back into that location.
And it's what do they call it when you find it in movies? But little things in there, they call them Easter eggs. And you can almost find the Easter eggs of, hey, this piece was up here by the church at one time. So it's became a spot of historical relics that have been preserved in one way or another instead of being thrown away.
Correct.
So did any council members have any questions over this? Okay, so thank you, Rochelle. We will ask for public comment on this matter.
If you would like to make comment on this item, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or dial *9 on a phone line. And at this time, I do not see any public comment.
Okay, so I will bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
Go for it, Ann. Your family had an interest in it at one time, as we saw in the
I walked past
records.
that property for years. I move to approve the acquisition, okay, my microphone's on, okay, of the real property located at 243 South Washington Street, APN number 002-151-010 in the amount of $126,900, and authorize the city administrator to sign and finalize all documents associated with the purchase.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Moved by Councilmember Segerstrom, second by Councilmember Such. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
Aye.
And Councilmember Such?
Aye.
Excellent. Passes 5-0. Yay. Just a little bit of a background. I know that's something that the councils of the past 20 years wanted to do, and it's finally happening. So government moves at a snail's pace, but it's finally done. Okay, on to item number 6.
It locks into permanent, some, 10 or 12 parking places that
Yes.
are always really desirable
A
downtown.
possible electric charging station.
Yes.
That too.
Okay, item number 6, consideration to approve acquisition of real property located at 290 South Washington, or South Stewart Street, California, APN 002-151-003, in the amount of $150,000, and authorize the city administrator to sign and finalize all documents associated with the purchase of the property. Mary Rose.
Council members, again, another item before you in regards to purchasing a real property. The purchase of the property is in regards to your 2020 goals and objectives that were approved in February. The piece of property, as staff has been looking, would serve 2 purposes for the city of Sonora. First and foremost, it would clean up a blighted property in the downtown historic area in which it's been blighted for quite some number of years. And again, it is within the historic downtown area of Sonora. But also it would allow the city to establish an affordable housing program in a time when housing demand and affordability substantially exceeds supply. So we recommend the city council approve the acquisition of this real property. The funds associated with the purchase of this property would be funded by both your redevelopment housing program and community development block grant, or CDBG grant funds. And both of those funds are specific to the types of programming in which they are allowed to be used for. So again, no general funds would be used to purchase this piece of property. The city is working with other agencies in regards to this piece of property, such as the County of Tuolumne and also ADCA, when we look at in regards to our affordable housing program. So this would be done in conjunction with other agencies as well as the city of Sonora. Again, it's asking for authorization to approve the purchase of 290 South Stewart Street in the amount of $150,000, and the attached commercial property purchase agreement is there for your review.
Okay, any council member questions? Okay, then I will move to public comment on this.
At this time, if there's any public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, or dial *9 if you're on a phone line. And at this time, council members, I do not see any public comment.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for a motion and second.
I'd like to make a motion to approve acquisition of real property located at 290 South Stewart Street, Sonora, California, APN number 002-151-003, in the amount of $150,000, and authorize the city administrator to sign and finalize all documents associated with the purchase of the property.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Such and second by Mayor Pro Tem Plummer. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
Aye.
And Councilmember Such?
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. Okay, item number 7, consideration to ratify Councilmember Such's recommendation to appoint Alyssa Mansfield to serve as a Social Equity Committee member. So who gets to speak on this one?
I'll introduce it and allow Councilmember Sutch to add it. As you recall, council members, on July 20th, 2020, the council gave direction to staff on the selection and formation of a newly created social equity committee. On September 10th of that year, the council voted to approve the following members of the social equity committee, and they're detailed in that agenda packet for you. Each member was selected by their respective council member. And so the committee is made up of 5 committee members of the public chosen by a respective council member, and 2 members of the city council, which are Councilmember Sutch and Councilmember Garaventa. In January of 2021, committee member Sylvia Roberts submitted her resignation to Councilmember Colette Sutch. The council gave direction on May 3rd to open a recruitment and an application process to select a new committee member. Those applications were given a deadline by May 28th. We received 2 additional applications. And also we reviewed the previous 6 applications from the previous filing period back in September for a total of 8 applications that were reviewed by Councilmember Sutch. At this time, Councilmember Sutch has selected Alyssa Mansfield as her committee representative, and she asked that you ratify her recommendation.
Okay, Councilmember Sutch.
So we had 2 new applications, Lisa Mansfield and Daryl Fisher. I called and spoke to both of them. I had a preset list of questions that I asked them. I had really good conversations, I think, with both of them. I also called Olivia Brown, and she's moving to Portland, so she was not
Oh, I didn't know that.
available.
Olivia Brown. I'm sorry, Jim was asking.
She's moving to Portland. Yes.
She is awesome.
I also spoke to Linda Dutemple, who is just very engaged in something else right now, but is following the work of social equity. I spoke to Victoria Martinez, who was still interested, and had a good conversation with her. I did not speak to Dawn Warfield. I called, but her mailbox was full. But I did speak to Dawn before the social equity started, and she had decided that she wasn't interested. And I think she's moving in a couple of weeks. And she's very involved with the PhD program.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke with Lane Willie, I think is how you pronounce her last name. She also has followed the work of the Social Equity Committee, but she's moving, or she spends the summer at a lake in Vermont, but she'll be back in the fall. I spoke to Karen Wood, who follows social equity pretty closely, but she also declined. I ask that you approve Alyssa's appointment to the committee. I think she's well-spoken, she's engaged, she knows the work of social equity. There's no need to bring her up to speed. She has watched many of the meetings. So that's it. Any questions about?
Any members or I will ask this because this kind of has came up with appointments and that sort of thing, to be fair. Did you work with any other council members on this, or did you do it alone?
I did it alone.
Okay. Okay. Any council member questions or comments?
I do have a question. Is Ms. Manfield available for questions?
I do not think she's on here. I know that she went to work late today, so she was working late this evening.
Well, the reason I asked is because she writes that she has a son who lives in a world where black boys and men are being hunted down and killed. I feel I will be in that. And I think it would be only fair to have asked her, but the context I read that in, and with the Social Equity Committee, I'm sorry about the microphone. The context of the Social Equity Committee is that she means police are doing that, and that's how other people that I have presented it to feel about it. My feeling is that this makes it awfully hard for us to recruit new policemen or even keep the ones we have if we make the face of the city somebody who believes the police are trying to kill their sons.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid I can't support her because of that. I just feel it's wrong to our city. It destroys some of the feeling of trust and support that we should be giving to our police. They have my complete support. And I think Daryl, for example, is that young man who could have actually represented the voice of young black men on the committee, that he would have been a far better choice, but I won't be supporting her. And I don't know, I almost resent being dragged into a position where I'm dragging somebody who is doubtless very wonderful and respectful in other ways, but because I don't want to do that. And it's like you said when we were talking about the city, the planning commission. It puts you in a position where it's hard to be frank, but I would recommend that we decline this nomination.
May I respond?
Of course. I mean, this is a discussion. I'm no god or king,
No.
and
You know,
but
I think you all know that I have never I don't speak ill of the police in this town. I have great respect for the police in this town. That's actually not how I read that, although now that you say that, I understand that. There was nothing in the conversation that appeared that she was going to speak disparagingly of the police at all. So I thought she was very respectful and well-spoken and courteous. You know, I think that she will be a great asset. And, you know, I mean, I can't muzzle her, but
well, of course not.
Certainly, there was nothing about that came up in my conversation with her at all. That's all.
Well, this is why I would have liked to have asked her for a clarification, but like I say, I don't think we should be supporting this because finding policemen and retaining our policemen is one of our harder jobs, and anything that blocks that or impedes it is a handicap. So that's I've said enough.
I believe Councilmember Garaventa had a question.
Yeah, I'd heard, I'd kind of been, I don't know, forewarned or about this thing. And, you know, I read it differently than you did, Mark. When I started reading it, it was when it was relayed to me, it was a concern about that. But she didn't say lives in a community or lives in a city or lives in a county, but she said lives in a world. And I can tell you from experience, from my relationship, that Black mothers feel this way. And it's not directly related to law enforcement at all. It's what's happened with the white supremacist movements that have kind of come to the fore lately, more than usual. I don't think that, it doesn't seem to me that this is at all directed at law enforcement. As a matter of fact, when I was kind of relayed this information, I kind of tried to look her up on Facebook. And one of the things I noticed wasn't a whole lot because she's mostly private, but she did actually liked a Sonora Police Department post, and that post was about the anniversary of, well, anniversary is a bad word, but it is an anniversary of Dave Grant's accident where he was killed out here at the Pedro Y. So if someone was anti-police, I don't think she'd be in support of both the Sonora Police Department's post of a fallen sheriff's deputy. So, but I think Black mothers have and I know from experience, so that Black mothers have a real concern concerned that their kids and their husbands, for the most part, husbands, are being targeted in some way by the community or a certain community. But I didn't see this at all as being directly at law enforcement. So she doesn't mention law enforcement. She doesn't say law enforcement.
No,
at all.
I read it, the third time
So
reading, I
I
said, oh, shoot. She
So I
doesn't
think
say
it's-
police
it's
hunting them, but that's why I wanted to ask, because
Yeah.
that's the first impression, and in the context of the Social Equity Committee and the formation thereof, that seems like the rational conclusion.
Uh-huh.
I mean, after all, Chauvin was just convicted. I mean, to me, that's the logical conclusion.
So, okay,
Thank you.
pretty much done.
I'll leave my questions after the public comment. So, Ann, did you have anything to say?
No, I mean, I was allowed to choose my representative on the Social Equity Committee, and so I respect Colette's choice of who she would like to represent her.
Okay. Okay, so we will ask for public comment on this.
At this time, if you have any
This,
public comment on this item, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, or star 9 if you're on a phone line. And your first public comment is from Darren Duez.
Go ahead, Darren.
So sitting and watching, I obviously heard something about that, but here's the thing. Facebook's Facebook. Let's stay away from that kind of stuff and give this person the chance, really. I'm at ends with this Measure V thing right now. I'm on Facebook telling them exactly how it is, and people can't use that and say, oh, he's a giant a-hole and all this stuff. It's where she stands. Let's give her a chance. Let's get her in there and get down to some work. We're already behind so much from losing Sylvia, so we need this kind of support. We need people behind us to actually get the stuff that we need to get done. I don't know her. We have mutual friends together, so I'm sure that she's probably a very nice person, but why are we judging anybody on their Facebook posts? I post stuff just to piss people off all day long. Has nothing to do with the character, actions, or morals that I have. So stay away from going with the Facebook stuff. Stay away from that. You know, we all make mistakes in life. We all learn, we all grow. Why can't she? You know, she could think completely different from the time that whatever post you guys are talking about. I haven't seen it, but she could think completely different since then. So don't push that on her. Obviously, if she gets in there and she isn't the person to be, I mean, we'll take it from there. I mean, I sit on that committee, so something important. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Again, if you have any public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, or star 9 if you're on a phone line. And there is a public comment from Megan Mills.
Oh, go ahead, Megan.
Thanks so much. Hi, this is Megan Mills. I'm wanting to express my support for this candidate for the Social Equity Committee, and also speak on behalf of Nikki Coleman, who's not here tonight, but has asked that someone speak in support of this candidate as well, and that's what I'm doing. Thank you so much.
And I'll get it right this time. Thank you, Ms. Mills.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
You have another public speaker from Joanna Gallagher.
Oh, go ahead, Joanna.
Hi there. I just want to express my wholehearted support for this candidate. She and I went to the same elementary school and high school together, and I can vouch for her integrity her whole life long. I'm so excited for the work that she'll be able to do on this committee.
Oh, thank you.
Council members, you have another public speaker from Terry.
Go ahead, Terry.
Hello, good evening. I just want to say I also fully support this candidate. I think it would be really important to move forward with her. I really admire a mom who can speak up and want something better for her son in the world, and I don't see that as a negative. I never, in the application, I didn't read anything that sounded like she was kind of not supportive of the police in any way whatsoever. So I hope that you all really support this candidate. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's an additional public speaker from A Consul.
Hi there, it's pronounced Consoli, and I would also like to vouch on her behalf, knowing her also through elementary school and high school. She will be a wonderful asset to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, council members, I don't see any additional public comment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, first of all, I got to say, this has been one of the, give me just a second, Mark. It's been one of the few times where I've seen something where something could be divisive or appear to be divisive. And I really appreciate, like, everybody appears to be coming together and being nice, and it's rather refreshing. So I'll make more comments in a minute, but Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, despite my lack of support, I would like to thank Ms. Manfield for her willingness to serve and work for the community. I think that no matter what one's position, that's always a worthwhile person and attribute, and we have to be thankful for the public for that. And then I would also like to explain to the public that my comments are not based on Facebook texts, but rather the public application and the words of the applicant on that application. So I almost never see Facebook, even if it were an issue. That's not where I get my information.
Okay. So I'll just go out and say, I don't think I've met Ms. Mansfield. I know several of her siblings or cousins, great people. The ones that I know are great people. I believe she has one brother at an 82 Camaro. Really, we kind of dorked out on, cars. So really good people. That was my biggest question looking at the application. I look at what people write. I wish we could speak to her tonight. But Colette, I trust her judgment. And, again, I can't reiterate how important it is to back up our city's police department. I've watched Taru and then our former police chief, Mark Stenson, go in and basically put their literally their blood and their sweat and their tears into their job, and how much they don't take the job for granted. So if this person, is positive with the police department, then I'm great with that. But I just, that was one of my big concerns reading that, because I looked at it and went, oh my gosh. So, and it is what it is. So everybody has their own perception. So, I mean, and I guess I can throw something else out here, but I don't want to go too far. I would like to see the Social Equity Committee grow by 2 members, and I don't want to discuss it right now because we can't. But I would like to see that happen, and I would like to see a member of our police department actually sit on that, because I think there are issues that I think we could further resolve going down the road, and we can't do it without partners. So I think we've got, yeah, we've got a great police department. I can't reiterate that enough. And I've dealt with the police department a lot the last few years, and I just think they're a great group of people who care about not only our community, but about the law and our Constitution. So, anyone else like to say anything? Oh, Councilmember Sutch.
I just would like to say that there has never been any anti-police sentiment on the committee, not even one word that I can think of.
I don't think your microphone's
on. It actually is on, but
okay.
I'm just not close enough, sorry. So there hasn't, I don't think that there has been, I mean, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember any anti-police sentiment, and I don't feel any anti-police sentiment at all. I have great respect for Sonora Police. So, and I didn't read this that way. And I just want to thank you, Jim, for sort of clarifying that. That was helpful to me. So I spoke to Alyssa for quite a while, as I spoke to Daryl for quite a while. And actually I spoke to Daryl twice, but she was really thoughtful and well-spoken, does great work with at County Mental Health, and I think she'll be a great asset.
Well, I'll just say this, I would, and again, I'll give my support, but I would really like to see Daryl on this committee. He's not a friend. I've had a couple of people ask me if he's a friend of mine. He's kind of an in-your-face type of guy, but he's somebody that has a different set of experiences. I think he's like myself, been arrested a few times, dealt with things, went through things, and I think he's somebody else that if we decide to grow the group in the future, we can consider. I was disappointed to not see him picked, but I can understand also.
Well, I would also like us to have a discussion about putting the chief of police or his designee on the committee. I think that in this context, that would be very useful. I mean, our first job as government is public safety, and the police are our biggest component of it. Leaving them off of something that this is important has perhaps been an oversight, but we can still correct that. And I think we ought to at least talk about it in the future.
I was actually going to comment on this. And the mayor spoke on this, but we should leave that, refer that to an agenda item.
Yeah,
but we have to, well, obviously we can't vote on it, but we can make enough comment to say, hey, we'd like to get this on an agenda.
I'll tell you what, Mark, let's bring that up at the end of the council meeting, so we're not in the wrong legally.
Yep.
So, okay, so I guess we look for a motion in a second on this, unless there's other council.
I'll move to ratify Councilmember Such's recommendation to appoint Alyssa Mansfield to serve as a Social Equity Committee member.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Segestrom, second by Councilmember Garaventa. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Regrettably, no.
Councilmember Garaventa.
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom.
Aye.
And Councilmember Such.
Aye. And I just want to make sure everyone knows her name is pronounced Elisa. It's a Lisa, not Alyssa.
Oh.
Just,
All right,
I just
sorry.
don't.
Yeah.
Okay, on to item number 8, consideration to approve the, for year 2021/2022, proposed operating and capital improvement budgets as presented. This is the exciting one.
Oh, there it is. I couldn't remember.
Short item.
Ooh, yay.
Okay.
Sorry, just waiting for me to make me co-host so I can do the presentation for you.
Excellent.
I can move this up. Hold on just a second. Okay, hopefully the public can all see that. This presentation is going to be presented by myself, Mary Rose Rutikanga, City Administrator, and your Administrative Services Director, Chris Gorski. And this is your fiscal 2021, fiscal year 2022 recommended budget. Last year, because there was so much uncertainty on where we were going to end up with revenues, with revenue backfill from the federal and state government, we had actually done a recommended budget in June, and kind of like county land, we did a final presentation or a final budget in August to kind of true up what our budget looked like. This year, we're going back to normal city budget, and we'll be presenting a recommended budget here on June 7th. Any adjustments to this budget, if the council so chooses to approve, will be brought back during mid-year budget, which is generally February of your following calendar year. So just trying to give just a synopsis, a high executive summary of where we are with our fiscal year 2022 budget. Again, this budget begins on July 1st. We continue to see budget challenges due to COVID-19 pandemic. We're seeing continued closures of businesses, but we are starting to see local business recovery. Our sales tax, and we're going to go into detail with that about looking at what our sales tax is doing as far as the recovery is concerned, and so forth. We are continuing, as we've been saying, for more than 1 to 2 to 3 fiscal years. We do have increased personnel costs, most notably in your CalPERS unfunded liability, your health insurance costs. Those continue to add expenses that are exceeding the revenues that we receive here within Sonora. So that is of great concern, and we continue to bring that forward to the council, that those expenses are far exceeding the revenues that we are seeing here in Sonora. So over the past fiscal year, we have been trying to diversify those revenues, looking at different revenue streams, increasing TOT, cannabis revenue, and so forth, to try to address the stagnation of revenue. Also, your deferred maintenance of facility and capital assets. Understandably so, during the last Great Recession, there was a big tightening of the budget and a big limitation on what costs would be expended within your budget. And deferred maintenance of facilities and capital equipment had received a lot of shortcomings when it came to actual expenditures on those types of items. However, it's time to start putting back into our deferred maintenance, as we need to start taking care of buildings, facilities, HVACs, roofs, your roads. And so the largest increase you're going to see in your budget presented is going to be directly related to those deferred maintenance of facilities and your capital equipment, such as roads. And then finally, as we're coming right off of your goal setting session, homelessness and housing affordability is a priority issue here for staff, as well as the council has determined that moving forward in fiscal year 21-22. So as I just stated, we are seeing an increase to our general fund revenues in regards to sales tax. Our revenues are made up of multiple revenue line items. Sales tax, we are starting to see that budgeted year-over-year recovery. I will say that budgeted year-over-year increase is 14% increase. However, if you recall, last fiscal year, we were reduced from the previous fiscal year of 19-20. So even though we're seeing an increase year-over-year between our very COVID-19 year of 2021, we're still trying to see those increases pre-COVID-19. We are cautiously optimistic that those revenues are starting to increase, and we're starting to see revenue recovery within your local economy. But again, we are going to be cautiously looking at those revenues as they come in through the fiscal year. Again, another increase to your general fund revenues is the cannabis revenues. We're going to talk about how we're utilizing those cannabis revenues within your budget. And then, of course, the American Rescue Plan. We here at the city received notice that we will be receiving an allocation of about $915,000. We're actually going to go into detail about the usage of those monies. Here at the city of Sonora, we did not reduce services to the residents. We held the line. We were able to only lay off one position, but did not furlough employees, did not reduce services, and relied on the city reserve to bridge the deficit to be able to maintain essential services. So a large part of that American Rescue Plan is to go back to replenish those reserves and to really account for that revenue backfill that we so desperately need. And then, of course, we will continue to monitor revenue expenses and bring back any budget adjustments for fiscal year 21-22 at your mid-year budget update, which will generally be in February. Go ahead, Chris.
And so this slide basically shows the revenue and expenditures over the last several years, and you can see that that's always been very tight with revenues and expenditures. And then what we did in 2021 is we had the COVID pandemic, and you can see revenues basically fell off a cliff. We had initially thought it would be much worse, but we actually survived it quite well. And then in 21-22, the big jump in revenues is primarily the American Rescue Act of the $915,000, and that's when using that money to backfill for last year's revenues and to balance the budget for 21-22. It also allows us to have some money left over for future fiscal years. And this slide shows the unassigned fund balance over the last few years. And you can see, again, in 2021, we had to use fund balance to balance the budget. The city had been in a pretty good fiscal condition prior to the pandemic, and that allowed us to use a few $100,000, I think it was 340 something at this point, to balance the budget. And then in 21-22, we're going to get the 915 to help balance the 21-22 budget, and that will target us to have a unassigned fund balance of around 3.2 million.
And just a note on this slide, so that during the goal setting session, the council did request that staff bring back a reserve policy to direct that unassigned fund balance. That will be coming back here at your next council meeting on June 21st. So generally, this fund balance, this is what we call an informal reserve. It is always best practice to have a reserve policy, so you are formalizing what that fund balance represents, how much of the fund balance you need, and whatever is left over between that reserve and fund balance, how you direct those additional monies. And so that will be coming back on June 21st, the draft of your reserve policy, specifically looking at this unassigned fund balance. So again, your general fund reserves. Sales tax has been trending higher, again, like we stated, than your pre-pandemic 1920 levels. However, when we're looking at our TOT revenues, they are budgeted, they're not budgeted pre-fiscal year 1920. So we are still seeing historic lows on TOT revenues. We just heard from Supervisor Goldenberg that they saw, an increase in TOT. We're not quite seeing that rebound yet here locally within the city of Sonora. I would like to, think that the TOT revenues is based obviously largely on your hotels, and then here within the city from our short-term rentals. I will say that the majority of those owners really did act within the confines of your COVID regulations and did close and adhere to that. So that's where we're kind of seeing that TOT revenue reduction related directly to COVID closures. Again, your American Rescue Plan or your American Recovery Act will receive a $915,000. Those are going to be divided half here in June, and then an additional half coming up next fiscal June. Will be on the same fiscal year, but within a year from now. Unlike the county, we have not received our first allocation yet. We're still patiently waiting as a small city to receive those funds. Hopefully that we will be receiving those shortly. We'll be obviously using the funding to reimburse fund balance. From this current fiscal year, as you recall, we used those additional monies to bridge that budget deficit. And then again, we have additional revenue shortfall going into fiscal year 21-22, and those rescue plan monies will use to bridge that deficit as well. So if you look at the graph below there, you see the American Recovery Act funding, that's $915,000. We're using $326,310 for this current fiscal year that ends June 30th. And then additionally $305,316 for fiscal year 21-22. And then we are also trying to work locally with your Visitors Bureau to budget $50,000 for economic recovery, small business development, specifically looking at marketing for Sonora businesses. And seeing how we can go about a marketing plan or scheme here for our small businesses as they start to recover and things start to open for them. And so we have budgeted $50,000. We don't know what that plan looks like. It's just the budgeting right now. We're in the concept phase of that. So we do have still $233,000 that we have funding available left of that Recovery Act. We are still not quite optimistic that we're going to see full recovery coming this next fiscal year in our revenue. So we have used that as a placeholder in case there is additional budget deficit going into fiscal year 22-23, so that we don't have to rely on fund balance to bridge a gap, but it's there in place of any type of budget deficit. And this next slide, I'll let Chris go into detail on your revenue categories.
So this chart basically shows the revenues for the city over the 1920 actuals or estimated actuals for last fiscal, and then our budget. And as you can see, we've seen sales tax recover. It's basically, it really did take quite a hit when the pandemic hit. It has been recovering basically the entire year, and we've had a couple of months that have been very strong. And so we are budgeting the sales tax to go up for fiscal 21-22. And then the other thing that's remarkable on this slide is that the TOT tax, transient occupancy tax, is lower than historical, but it is up from what we've seen in 2021, back to around 420,000, and that is at 12% versus the 10% for the prior fiscal. So you can see it has affected the total sales at hotels, motels, and short-term rentals.
And so total revenues for the city will be, or for the general fund is right around 8.893 million. And that includes a transfers in of 2.4 basically.
Just want to highlight your cannabis revenues are budgeted at 312,000. And then also you'll notice that American Rescue Plan money, that 915,000. As I stated, we will be receiving half this fiscal, half in June and then half in the following June. That will be one lump sum for the fiscal year. So we are booking that 915,000 in that one fiscal year. So if we go forward to your expenditures, so again, you know, we worked diligently with your departments and asked departments to submit to us a status quo budget. Status quo meaning that the services and supplies outside of salary and benefits are stagnant based on what the current fiscal year is. And so based on that, we were able to put together a pretty solid budget for you. We have also been able to budget a prepayment in July of your city unfunded CalPERS liability. This will save the city about 3.5% of your annual expenditure. However, even with that prepayment, your unfunded liability, CalPERS unfunded liability, has increased by $128,000. So we were able, because of the American Rescue Plan, we're able to make that prepayment here in July, which reduces that overall unfunded liability. However, we're still seeing that unfunded liability just to continue to increase and increase year after year. So when we talk about personnel costs continuing to increase at a faster pace than revenues, this is one of the main sources that we're seeing it increase by. Your insurance costs increased by 14%. This does not include health insurance. So health insurance is a beast all of its own. It kind of ebbs and flows contingent on what's going on in the market. We're generally at about 8 to 10% increase year over year with insurance costs. These insurance costs we're talking about are your general liability, your property, and your auto. So those increases are also as an expense within your budget. This year, due to cannabis revenue, and because this was a fiscal year 2021 priority for the city council, we have budgeted a one fully benefit city planner 1-2. And then we've also increased the building inspector and official contract hours. So normally your building official is budgeted and inspector is budgeted at about 2 days a week. We are increasing those contract hours to 3 days a week. And those are being offset by cannabis revenue. So community development capacity issues offsetted by your cannabis revenues. And then we are also budgeting 10,000 or about 3% of what we are budgeting for cannabis revenues in the school resource officer program. And I'm gonna have your police chief, or excuse me, your lieutenant, Daniel, or your police chief, come up and just talk briefly about what that program is and what that 10,000 would be used for within your within the school resource officer program. And then I'm just going to stop sharing so that you can see the police chief.
Good evening, council. So as you know, we do have a school resource program. It's funded through the tobacco tax initiative. And because of that, we've already have processes in place to educate and share information and mentor with students the dangers of tobacco. Now, one of the fundamental duties of a school resource officer is to educate and mentor children and share the concerns about drug use and alcohol use. So we already have a process in place. So the additional monies at this point is not going to add any additional staff hours or staff availability right now. But it's an important enough campaign as far as the education against youth marijuana use. So we're going to take it on and do our best to find realistic ways to apply these funds that will support our community and our youth within it. So far, We have used some of the money to purchase brochures and distribute through schools and other public locations. I placed some of the brochures back here for your edification if you want to look at them when we're all done. I didn't want to interrupt the process by distributing them, but several brochures, we personalize them with City of Sonora, our Sonora Police Department logos on them, and our little messages, you know, keep your head clear, keep your body healthy, stay safe, those type of things. Also in April, we were able to send our school resource officer to attend a course called Teaching Cannabis Awareness and Prevention. So that gave the school resource officers some more tools to disseminate education and prevention measures. We're also working with the Public Health Department to create messaging campaigns. And we've talked about using banners and downtown for special events, sandwich boards, KVML messages, and also working with the merchants and try to get some educational messages on receipts and those type of things. Purchasing t-shirts and posters possibly for the STEP program at Sonora High, and collaborating with Public Health and the YES Partnership for messaging and youth summits and the same. So those are kind of in general what we've been working on, what we've done, and what we're planning for use of this money. I think it's very valuable for us to put that education, that money into education for the local youth. I think they'll be impacted quite significantly over the years. They already have been. So, any questions?
Just a comment. As you know, I have a ton of kids. But I've had a lot of good comments from my kids and my kids' friends at the elementary school. And then I've heard other kids talk about our officers going in at the high school and speaking with them. And the brochures are one thing, but the relationship is a whole nother. And us having that program where the officers come in and speak with the kids and they get to know the officer, it breaks down a lot of barriers.
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's hard to measure the outcomes of a school resource officer program, but we've had so many positive comments, and so many kids need that mentorship, and unfortunately some aren't getting it at home. So it's a wonderful program, and I support it all day long, every day, and I hope we continue to be able to utilize it.
Yeah, me too.
I just wanted to ask, the program is already in place then?
So
when did it start?
The school resource program has been in place
Yeah, I know that.
more recently for the past 3 years.
Yeah, the cannabis, the cannabis portion of it started when?
So really since about, I'm trying to remember when we got that first allocation for that from the donation for the cannabis.
Oh, I see.
Education, April?
I believe, yeah, it was March or April.
So right after that, we began, you know, ordering these brochures. They're not cheap, but they're youthful, and you know, really, it's something for the school resource officer
I'll pass
to.
them around. Thank you.
There's one of you know, there's stacks of each one over there, but you know, when the officer has that and they're talking to the kids about you know, the dangers of use, to hand that over, and it has you know, the logo on it. There's that connection as well, instead of just leaving them places. There's also one in there about speaking to your children about the dangers of marijuana use. So.
Oh, Councilmember Such.
Would there be any, I know that the relationship is important, but would there be any value in having those available at the dispensaries? And
I'm sorry, value in what?
Having the brochures at the dispensaries so that people buying marijuana can take them home to their kids and also read them.
Absolutely, and one of the uses for the brochure that says "Speaking to your children," that's the one we kind of thought we would work with the dispensaries and have them placed somewhere in there for their use. It's probably going to get more attention from adults there than, you know, tracking down, you know, individual parents. Sometimes we'll find them at you know, at school events, but that's a good place for them to see it. So absolutely.
Don't you think you could use more than $10,000?
Pardon me?
Don't you think you could use more than $10,000?
I'm having a hard time hearing.
She asked if you could use more than $10,000.
Well, you know, we're still figuring out how this program can work. So if with the staffing we have now, we got to see what that looks like. If in some situation it'll allow us to increase our staff hours for our school resource officer, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's where the real benefit would come from. Because like you said, the one-on-one interaction is the most valuable.
And what are the hours? Is it like 6 hours a day for 8 months out of the year?
The school resource officer right now is scheduled for 30 hours a week. And so
between two of them?
Well, I only have one.
Only
I was
have
only
one.
able to, we were only able to hire one. It's really, really tough to find a qualified sworn officer that wants to work part-time. So we're very fortunate to have Michael Carson. He's doing a good job so far and getting good feedback from the schools.
But you're budgeted for 2, right?
Yes, so that was a plan. When the grant was written for those school resource officers, it was to hire 2 part-time school resource officers. We originally did. One left voluntarily. We were unable to get the other one, through the process, and we really didn't have many more applicants. It's really tough to get an applicant for a part-time.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, any other questions? So I wanted to speak to this really quick because Mary Rose and I had talked about this after the, and true, I don't think there's anything else.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. After the meeting that I had missed, and that particular education benefit had went down in flames, Mary Rose and I had talked about this and, how can we bring it back up in a constructive manner? And basically she presented this, and I think it's not only is it a good compromise, but I think it gives the police department more ammunition to fight this with young people. And I think it's a good start. I would love to have an officer at every school, all day long. If I had my choice, 1 or 2 officers at Sonora Elementary, at Sonora High School. That's not a reality right now, but I hope in the future it could be, because I'm a big believer in police officers at our schools. Again, having the relationship. I still remember my DARE officer in the late 80s. So, but again, I think this is a good start. So, and this takes care of the education part of it that we had discussed months and months ago.
I would like to see it as a continuing budget item.
I think that, isn't that somewhat implied that it's a 3% of revenues?
No, it's not. It's just budgeted at 10,000, which represents currently 3% of what is budgeted.
Yeah, we can bring this back at mid-year and see what the revenues were and if there would be any changes.
Yeah, but we don't budget percentages, we budget dollars.
And the best part is you and I are at least up here another 3 years, and Mark also, so we can make sure it happens.
So moving on, hold on just a second. So this is something really exciting for us. We have been working with the Tuolumne County Air Pollution Control District, and we were able to work with them in terms of getting some grant revenue to put a electric vehicle charging station here in downtown Sonora. So there's budgeted, there's a total budget of $50,000, but $35,000 is coming directly from that grant revenue from the Air Pollution Control District. So the city will be contributing $15,000 of general fund revenue towards that total electric vehicle charging station. But again, we're really happy to work with the county on this, and we have not selected officially a site of where that's going to go yet. We're still doing the evaluation of where the best site would be here in downtown. But again, it will be in the downtown area here soon, hopefully within this fiscal year. And then one thing, something that's new here, and this kind of goes hand in hand with our reserve policy that we'll be bringing back on the 21st. We are budgeting for the first time in Sonora City history a contingency line item. This falls in line with your budgeting best practices, and this is different than an unfunded reserve that would be established by a reserve policy. So your contingency line item is for any incidentals throughout the year that we can bring back to the council and say we need to use a portion of these monies to fund this, this, and this. And it requires a 4/5 budget vote to transfer those monies. Once you establish a formal reserve policy, there are only few circumstances in which you can dip into those monies to actually be utilized. One is during a declared emergency. The other is during budgeting time when you need to use those reserves to budget and bridge that deficit. But this contingency line item falls in line with your GASB and GAAP budgeted principles to ensure that we have some sort of contingency in case of those incidentals. Generally, but budgeting best practice states that you should be at about 3% of your overall appropriations for contingency. This is our first year budgeting, so it represents roughly about a 1%, a little more than a 1%, and we will work our way up to that. But we're really happy to start doing this in our budget. I'm gonna let Chris kind of walk through the actual line item expenditures.
So this shows the expenditures over the last couple of years, including the estimated actual for last year and then our final budget or proposed budget. And you can see that salaries and benefits have gone up, and that represents 44% of the total. Basically, for the unfunded CalPERS liability, it did go up 128,000. So if you think out of basically the 8.8 million in the general fund, we spend right at $1 million annually for our unfunded liability. So the other big thing on this is the capital projects. There's $3.3 million in capital projects for next year. The city hasn't spent much on capital projects in several years. And there is a list on a future slide. And there is the list.
You want to go through them, Chris?
Sure. So capital projects in next year's budget include the Farmers Market bathroom project. That is a general fund project, and that is on Stewart Street. We're currently working through our generator project and hope to have that done by the end of the year. That is putting grant-funded generators at City Hall, PD, and Public Works, and also repaired the one at Fire. The ADA 504 plan is a general fund funded plan. Basically, they generate a ADA compliance plan for the city. They go through everything, sidewalks, the buildings, etc. There's the electric vehicle charging station. That's $50,000 in total. And again, that's probably going to end up either at the fountain lot or at the city's parking garage. And then there's the per capita grant, which is the Woods Creek Park project. That's for next year. And then there's a couple of signal controllers, which are street lights that need to be upgraded. The controllers, including battery backups for all of those. Snell Street, there's a rehab, so we'll use some highway user tax monies to rehab Snell Street. Going down, there's the Lineberg Street project. That's Lineberg at Bradford. There's a retaining wall and curb replacement. That's SB1 funded. And then there's the two large Caltrans projects. Well, I skipped over one. A. So there's the Greenlee Road Extension project. There is an alignment study that we're sharing with TCTC. And we're funding $175,000 to get that project moving. And then there's the two large Caltrans projects. That's the Stockton, Washington Transit project, and then the Washington Elkin Red Church project.
So this just represents a major increase in capital expense for the city. And just from that Greenlee Road Extension bypass alignment study, so this was actually something that previous city councils had adopted to match funds for that alignment study, and the match at that time was $175,000. So we are going to be using traffic mitigation funds to put those match dollars in the budget. And then, of course, your biggest is your transit project. They're budgeted at just over about $2 million, but those will be Caltrans grant monies utilized for that.
May I ask a question? What is the lifespan or the average lifespan of the traffic signal controllers normally?
There are 15 years for those.
Okay.
They are maintained by the manufacturer for several years, and then at some point the technology just moves on and then you have to replace.
Thank you.
So just again, this is a pie graph just showing the expenditures by department. And we show this here just to reinforce the priorities established by the city council of where your general fund dollars are actually going. Of course, the largest portion is represented there by the police department at 41%, followed behind by your fire and public works. Total public safety, we do include public works as your public safety department. Your general fund expenditures of just about 70% going towards those three departments. And then the rest is kind of distributed through administration, and administrative services and so forth. I do want to draw your attention to a couple of new departments that we've put into this budget. We have created an information technology or IT budget. Formerly, it was just under administrative services. As you know, Chris Gorski wears many hats. As also your finance officer, he's your HR director, he's also your IT director. But we have been investing a lot in IT, and so the need to create an actual department has arisen. And if in the future there is any type of requirement for any type of personnel or additional expenses, they're going to be budgeted right there in your IT department. We've also created a fleet services department. So your one public works employee that is out of the shop, he is now under fleet services and not under public works. And fleet services is going to be underneath Chris Gorski. So he's going to manage your fleet management. And that's something we're going to be bringing back again. This fiscal year is a fleet management plan. So we can really start planning for the future when it comes to fleet, because we know our fleet is extremely important, especially in regards to our officer safety and retention of our police department. Again, I kind of show this slide every year just because I want to keep showing the council that your city staff, I feel, is doing a stellar job in doing work year after year. Again, additional work with less staff than we had in your pre-recession numbers. So again, fiscal year 07-08, we had about 55 FTEs. We're now down to about 47 total personnel, and FTEs obviously are your total full-time equivalent. So they could be a multitude of part-time that equate up to that 47. We're representing in your community development department, instead of 2, we now have 3 employees. So we're really excited about that. But even 3 represents still capacity issues in community development. They are the face of our community. They are the face of the city. When residents come and talk about development, they are coming to your community development department. And so we need to ensure that we are providing capacity for them to ensure that the vibrancy and the economy and the development of the city happens. So we're really excited that we're able to provide an additional employee for that department, and we're doing it through those cannabis funds. So again, still though, your community development department is down 40% from pre-recession, and public works, I just want to draw your attention to public works is still down overall 36% based on the numbers. So conclusion and next steps. Again, as I said this in the beginning, your general fund revenues are budgeted. We're budgeting cautiously optimistic with the help of the American Rescue Plan. As we said many times over this last fiscal year, those monies coming from the federal government really needed to support that revenue backfill. Because we were relying so heavily on our reserves to bridge that deficit, we are now going back to repay the use of those monies. And your budget also reflects your fiscal year 2021 City Council approved goals and strategic plans. When we look at where we're funding Greenlee Road money, when we're looking at community development, adding positions in community development, looking as we relate to homelessness and housing affordability, looking at a priority for that. So we are looking at those goals and budgeting accordingly. And then again, cannabis revenues provided much needed staffing capacity increases in your community development department. When we look at policy considerations in your next steps, we are still going through the renegotiation of labor contracts. We know that those labor costs have a large impact to our city budget, especially in terms of health. Those health costs really play a lot into the overall benefits that we provide as a city, and they have impacts in whether or not where we're at from a position allocation. Again, we talked about fund balance and reserve policy. That's coming back on the 21st. And as we showed to you those CIP projects budgeted, we are going to be bringing forth by the end of this calendar year, so by the end of December 31st, we will be bringing forth a capital improvement plan, which will lay out the projects, the capital projects for the city for the next 3 to 5 years. So we're really excited about that, so that you as council members can directly identify what we're going to be doing year after year from a budgetary perspective as far as capital improvement goes. And then something we talked about in our goal setting session was the way to develop a strategic values and plan for economic development. So I'm going to be working on that as we go forward in the fiscal year. And then of course, number one, homelessness, affordable housing. That is a prime issue for the city as we have it in other issues and discussions. And as we're seeing it here locally on our streets. And so we're going to be bringing back items as it relates to homelessness and housing affordability. And at this time, I will entertain any questions you have for the council.
Any council members have any questions? Councilmember Such?
I'm sure that you've answered this, but in many of these budgets under operating expenditures, there's a section called services, and it's usually quite a large amount of money. What is that?
So when we put together budgets, it's done through GASB 54, or the requirements of how budgets are supposed to be developed. And the way that you're seeing is services represent a myriad of different types of line items. So the way you were supposed to put together a budget is through budget classes, and that services is a budget class. A budget class is then broken down by line items. That could be anything as far as maintenance of equipment, software, office supplies, those kind of things. So even legal services can be part of services. But again, we have to compile the budget based on what is required of us. And so again, we do it based on budget class, and that service represents that budget class.
So can I just dig a little more deeply, like for city clerk, 20,000 in services, what did you buy?
So for instance, when we have to post notices in the Union Democrat for ordinance, that's where those costs are put in. So those are legal requirements that we have to post, public hearings and so forth.
Yeah, and there was some money for the new agenda management software that went in there as well for last year.
And for city council, 267,000 in services. What's
so that represents your total city attorney contract at budgeted about 250,000.
I have a lot of flags, but that's it for right now.
Okay. Any other questions? We can turn it over to public comment. Unless there's any other questions before we turn it over. Okay.
At this time, if you have any public comment for the fiscal year 2021-22 budget, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, or *9 if you're on a phone line.
I don't see anybody.
I don't see any hands raised, council members.
So
What's that? They were mesmerized by the presentation.
So I'll make a couple of statements about this budget. We're finally getting some projects done that have needed to be done, that the public has demanded us to have done, and things are finally moving forward. I think one of the biggest credits we can do is give our former city administrator, Tim Miller. Again, I've said it a few times, but our former city administrator, Tim Miller, a lot of credit for basically during this whole COVID-19 crisis for the city not losing services. He was a big believer in having a savings. Our former council members and former mayors were big believers in having something to stop a big budget shortfall. So we didn't lose anybody. We were able to provide services. We were able to keep our police department up and going, our fire department, public works. And we were able to answer the call when the public needed us. So I am, forever grateful to the people in the past and in the future that keep our budget in the black. That's what I'm saying. So, any other council member questions, comments? Councilmember Such?
Sorry, Mary Rose, I have another question. Under, or maybe I should ask Rochelle, under community development, building and planning, salaries and wages are 199,000. Are there salaries and wages from other departments that also are under community? I mean, that just seems really low. So for instance, farmer's market salaries.
Yeah, so for the community development department, it is spread across several things, including there's a per capita grant where there's going to be some of her salary, and there's the other projects as well.
Okay.
So yes, so generally we in other departments, we will budget, a certain part of the FTE of that personnel in other departments where they are utilizing their time.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, and the public's probably thinking, why aren't they asking more questions? And I think it should be noted that we've had individual meetings with Mary Rose going over the budget previously, so we know what's in this budget already, and gave feedback to Mary Rose individually or in groups of two, so we don't violate the Brown Act to get to this point. So that's probably why there's not a whole lot of questions.
And I asked some questions earlier today and they responded to me. So
I would like to throw out that.
Explain that.
Yeah.
I would like to throw out there that our police department is almost where it was in 2007, 2008, with numbers of officers and that sort of thing. And that is something that the public, I think, has demanded all of us. I know we hear about something that'll happen, something that'll come through town, crime related. We don't have enough officers. You don't have enough officers. And we're almost back to what we had 13 years ago. And that's taken a lot of work, a lot of good work from our chief. And again, it's great to see.
And I'll just add, Mr. Mayor, on that, there has been quite a bit of change, though, in the past 13 years. So when we're budgeting positions, we always want to make sure that we're budgeting for the capacity in which we have. That slide just represents that we're still under compared to pre-recession, and we are operating at a larger capacity with less staff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've already had public comment. I don't hear any other questions or comments, so
I will move to, let's see, approve the FY 2021-2022 proposed operating capital improvement budget as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Plummer and second by Councilmember Garaventa. Roll call vote.
Mayor, I'm sorry, just writing, make sure motion and the second down. Mayor Hawkins, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Yes.
Councilmember Garaventa.
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom.
Aye.
And Councilmember Such.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Okay, on to item number 9, adopt resolution number 6. Yep.
May I ask just one more question?
Sure.
Under Parks and Landscape, Old Wards Ferry Road, what are we doing there?
Parks and, what was it? What was the question?
Yep.
So there's that little drainage area that was done as part of that widening project of that road. And so that little triangle area, Public Works has to maintain that. So that's what's included as part of that.
Okay, thank you. That will be my last question.
Can I say one thing too? I appreciate your guys' support. It's been a rough time, Kim and I trying to hold down the fort. And all those capital projects you guys just approved, I have to oversee all of them. So I just appreciate the help because we're kind of sinking upstairs. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, so on to item number 9, adopt resolution number 6/7/2021A, establishing the GAN appropriations limit for year 2021-2022 for the city of Sonora.
Go ahead.
So this is the GAN limit for the city of Sonora. Basically, it's a limit that public funding for each agency, there's a calculation that sets the maximum funding that can be expended each year. It is based on things like the population, the per capita income levels of California. And in this case, I think it's the third year in a row, the city has decreased in population. And so it is used in the calculation. It's a 1.82% decrease in population. But the appropriation limit did go up because the California per capita income went up 3.8%. And so for the 21-22 fiscal year, the appropriation limit is $47,844,771. And now our $15 million budget needs to be below that, which it is substantially.
Yeah.
I think we'll make it.
Yes.
And I think our public should, or our constituents should be grateful that we're not taxing them at that maximum.
My goodness.
Okay.
Okay.
Spending at that time.
So is there any council member discussion on the GAN limit? Okay, looking for any public comment or any public comment.
Oh, man.
If you have any public comment, please raise your hand or dial *9. And I don't see any public comment, council members.
Okay. Bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
Move to approve resolution number 0607 to 2021A, establishing the GAN appropriations limit for fiscal year 2021-2022 for the city of Sonora.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Garaventa, second by Mayor Pro Tem Plummer. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
Aye.
And Councilmember Such?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. On to item number 10, approve resolution number 6721A to establish job descriptions for city planner, 1 and 2 position for the, and the relief farmers market manager, extra help position. Mary Rose.
So this item is actually coming from your HR Director, Chris Gorski. He does have an amendment. It's actually a correction. It's going to be resolution 0607 2021B because 2021A is the GAN limit. So we did provide the amended resolution in front of you. But the item before you are just approving the position descriptions that were just approved in the budget, just in the previous 2 items. So again, it's for your city planner 1, 2. And then also due to the tightening of from the state on how contracted employees can be employed within a public agency or actually within private industry now as well through AB 5, we can no longer contract staff for our farmers market. So they must be an actual city employee. And so that is also asking your approval to approve that job description as a relief part-time employee during the duration of the farmers market.
Okay, any council member questions? Councilmember Such.
I just have for the farmer's market relief employee, the job description says that they're at the market. I believe that when the market is in process. Is that correct? Is that employee at the market always?
They are, yes. And we also have backup farmers market relief. If they're not there, we always have somebody there to answer questions of vendors. They're located on the market.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. And is our current staff at the farmers market, do they meet the qualifications that we're asking for?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's reassuring. I'm very pleased with how it's working and it would be reluctant to pass something that would eliminate our current staff there, so.
This just gets us into compliance
Right.
with state law.
The intention was to keep same staff.
Just to be sure.
Yeah.
Can I clarify what that person does? Because I don't want it to be confused with something. So that farmer's market person is Becky, for those of you that go to the market. They come in the morning, they set up all the tables and everything during the day and make sure that, and then they also have to collect all the funds. They have to monitor the vendors, make sure everything's in compliance with all the state requirements. make sure the quality of produce is correct, and monitor all of the scales. So that is their job. That's what they do. And then they also answers questions and assist people as they need it. At the end of the day, they take everything down, put it away. They also coordinate where the vendors are going to go and help them with any locations or questions they have. So we take care of all the paperwork side here at City Hall and get everybody geared up to go. And then we take in all the revenue and we do all the revenue work and add everything, reconcile everything with Chris. So it's kind of a partnership, but that person is the face during that day.
Like I said, I was asking, I think Becky is doing a whiz-bang job. And I mean, it runs smoothly and it's lovely to go there.
When you find
I just
somebody, you
wanted to
don't want
make
to
sure,
lose.
because of the qualifications being such as they are, I just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't be putting her out of a job inadvertently.
Yeah, she does a great job. So, and it's,
Yep.
you don't want to lose anybody that's willing to do it.
Excellent. Anyone else?
So
Councilmember Segerstrom.
So is Becky is she in this job, or we're getting another person?
No, so right now she is contracted for the duration of the farmer's market period. We can no longer do that. So starting in next fiscal year, when we're
Then she would
gearing
be
up,
a
then we'll
relieved
have to
employee.
hire her into that position.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And then I did want to ask, it says the city planner, I mean, their budget, their salary and benefits is 100,000?
Mm-hmm. Just roughly, depending on where we intend, where if we hire that person, where they're going to come in. It's a range position, so we can hire it at an entry level point at a 1, or at a more journey level, which is a 2. And you got to remember that we're also
that's kind of a moving target.
Yeah, so it's a moving target. We're also, not doing it, we're also providing succession planning for community development as well. So those are all going to be taken into account at the hiring of that position.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other council member questions, comments? Okay, we will ask for public comment.
If you have any public comment for this item, please raise your hand or dial *9 if you are on a phone line. And I don't see any public comment at this time.
Okay, so we will bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
I will move to approve resolution numbers 0607 2021-B to establish the job descriptions for the city planner 1 and 2 position and 1 or 2 position, and the relief farmers market manager extra help position.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Garaventa, second by Mayor Pro Tem Plummer. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Hawkins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Aye.
Councilmember Garaventa?
Aye.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
Aye.
And Councilmember Such? Aye.
Passes 5-0. On to the last item. Item number 11, provide a direction to staff regarding urgency ordinance 868, special temporary outdoor operations application and permit program.
Council members, so as everything that has happened in this COVID year, the agenda was posted and then there was an announcement made by the governor the following day. So with that in mind, though, I would still like to get direction from the council on ordinance 868. And I'm going to ask for help from Nubia, your city attorney, because just to kind of go into detail of what was actually extended by the governor. Nubia, would you kind of start us out on what that was on Friday?
So what the governor recently did was discuss the extension of licensing for outdoor restaurants and bars for purposes of state regulation. So what that really matters is ABC licenses. So we're talking about the extension of permits to sell and consume and authorize everything having to do with alcohol outdoors. That is still separate and apart from local jurisdictional control, which is something that Mary Rose wanted to bring to the council for discussion. So the point being that there can still be regulations at the local level that regulate whether or not you allow restaurants to operate outdoors. And that's hence the discussion why we wanted to bring it to you for discussion tonight.
And sorry, go ahead, Mr.
I'm sorry, I hadn't heard the governor's statement or How much longer is it, or is it indefinite as
So-
long as?
So in the agenda packet, and I'll just kind of, so we're talking about, so just for the public's knowledge, we're talking about urgency ordinance 868,
Right.
which the council approved back in May of 2020 to allow for the expansion of occupancy onto city sidewalks and city streets due to COVID-specific regulatory guidelines. So you're seeing, obviously, the restaurants with expansion on Washington Street and Lineberg and so forth. In the agenda packet, I had mentioned that it's unclear at this time whether or not ABC, how much longer they would be allowing for those expansion permits. We heard on Friday that the governor is going to be allowing for those expansion permits to continue until the end of this calendar year, so
Oh,
December
okay.
31st.
Okay, that's
Now,
what
the
I,
expansion permits have to be done in conjunction with any permitting that we do at the city level. So you can't have a business that asks
Okay.
for an expansion permit to operate outside without any type of permit from the city. And the police chief has been working with ABC in terms of businesses and their expansion permits.
Right.
Now, when the council adopted urgency ordinance 868, it was looking specifically at the regulatory restrictions due to COVID. So at the time, as you recall, businesses, we had just come out of pure lockdown. And your restaurants and your bars, well, not bars at the time, but your restaurants were now allowed to open up, but at very minimum capacity. We started at about 25%, then we moved to 50%. On June 15th, all restaurants and bars will be allowed to operate at full capacity. So there will no longer be any restrictions on the capacity limits of your city of Sonora, anywhere within the state of California businesses. They are allowed to operate at full capacity. That's still written in stone, yes. So where staff would like direction is, the urgency ordinance was done specifically due to allow those businesses to expand due to COVID restrictions. We are now going to be able to operate, businesses will now be able to operate at full capacity. And in terms of Lineberg, you have a business that is operating on a city street or city park in this regard, that is operating in full capacity and then expanding their capacity onto a city street. And the city has not entered it into any type of lease for rental of that space. So generally, when a private business wants to be able to utilize a city space, we generally have some sort of a fee agreement for them to be able to utilize that space. At this time, that business, Diamondback, is the only one that is allowable to use that space because of the restrictions from ABC that they have to be adjacent to their business. So it really does hinder other businesses for not being able to utilize that space. It's also a public park. And so it does, in terms, hinder the public enjoyment on that space. So at this time, staff is asking for direction from the city council. We do know, like we just stated, that the state is going to allow for the additional expansion until the end of December. Again, that expansion is just for the alcoholic ABC licensure to operate on a sidewalk or a street so they don't have open container violations. But again, from a COVID urgency ordinance capacity, businesses will be allowed to operate at full capacity. And what does the city council, what is your direction as far as allowing businesses to continue to operate for free on city facilities with full capacity within their businesses?
Councilmember Such?
So we don't, even though this is an emergency ordinance and it's no longer an emergency, we wouldn't need to write a new ordinance. We could just extend this one. Is that correct?
We would have to write a new ordinance to repeal this ordinance.
So the way that this urgency ordinance was drafted, it's contingent on the continuation of the declaration of emergency at the state level. It's not completely clear whether or not the governor is going to lift that entirely or just piecemeal with lifting restrictions. In any event, what staff's requesting is direction on if you want to make this more of a permanent program or the parameters of such, that would have to be codified in an actual ordinance. And again, the urgency ordinance is temporary in nature and should be left really just for those types of circumstances.
I mean, I personally would like to see the business.
I personally would like to see the businesses who can provide outdoor seating continue, because even though Diamondback is operating at 100% capacity, they certainly have not done well this year. And I think the governor said just till the end of this calendar year. I would like to see the Diamondback seating limited on Lineberg, because I think, Mary Rose, you've said that the way it's set up now is not ADA compliant, and I think we need to not turn a blind eye to that any longer. And that's true with anyone who has tables on the sidewalk, because I think that many of them have not really been ADA compliant. So I would like to see that enforced, but I think outdoor dining, if nothing else, provides a healthier dining experience. We don't know what COVID's going to do in these next months, and it really makes downtown, I think, much more vibrant appearing.
Amen.
So I would like to see that. About charging, I don't think that that's unreasonable. And I think that that's it for me. I would like to see it continue for at least, just to get us through this season, this summer and fall, and look at it again at the end of the year, depending on the governor's direction. That's it.
Councilmember Segerstrom.
Well, I've just noticed that the Diamondback is getting quite proprietary about the space that they occupy on Lineberg, and they should have some restrictions because it is a public space, and they put these tables out, and then if somebody sits at them, that's not at the Diamondback, they're reprimanded, and they're in a public space. So I think we need to at least work with the Diamondback to come to some compromise about what space they take up and what space is public, and what the public can use in the Lineberg corridor.
Okay. Chief, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to pretty much follow up with what Councilwoman Segerstrom had said about the borders. One of the issues that the police department is having is identifying where that expanded footprint for the serving area is. And without that, it's very difficult to enforce the open container portion. We are having problems with some of the patrons extending their open containers out into the sidewalk areas. Obviously, if they're in the street, it's a clear violation, but if the businesses do have an identified area where they are serving, it would be easier to enforce. Right now, it's very difficult.
And is that a general concern for all of them, or is this specific to Diamondback?
All of them.
Okay.
Yes. Not that we've had problems with all of them, but if we do, we need to know where those boundaries are. It became more evident in that Lineberg area.
Right.
We had two businesses working within that area and serving outside, and it became very problematic to identify where those boundaries were.
And while you're at the podium, if I could ask another question, that is, in addition to that boundary issue, are there any other issues or problems that the city council should be taking into account regarding, policing of these other areas? Outside, the continued outside dining, is that posing other problems that the police deal with that we just don't see otherwise?
I think a lot of the problems stem from not having clear boundaries where those boundaries are. We've had other issues that we may have had with that business otherwise. We've addressed those issues, and we, like Mary Rose said, we've worked with ABC to coordinate an effort to enforce. But I think most of the issues we're seeing come down to identifying those boundaries and businesses just wanting to push those boundaries a little bit.
Councilmember, or Plummer, if I may, so what was approved for Diamondback and Leineberg is not what is actually occurring.
And
So-
I'm not,
Yeah,
my
so the-
question is not specific to Diamondback, but to the, actually more to the other restaurants serving outside on the sidewalk.
So I will say from an enforcement standpoint, it does take quite a bit, of staff to be able to go down and to enforce those measures. So I agree
Yeah.
with the chief. We need to be able to have clear, instead of just, you can expand your
Right.
footprint, which was great for COVID because we wanted our businesses to be able to be open and to be able to
Expand a
have as
little.
much business as they could. Except for now, we have to remember that they are at full capacity. And so at what footprint are we going to allow them to continue to have beyond that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Or ask for public
And
comment?
did you have other comments that you wanted to finish? or-
No,
Okay.
no,
Because,
I think though that maybe that staff in the police department should come back with recommendations
Okay.
about footprints.
So if I may, so the urgency ordinance that was adopted, if we're not going to repeal, does allow the discretion of the city administrator to work with the businesses to be able to identify where they can be on city sidewalks and streets. So what I'm hearing from a direction standpoint is that the council is looking to continue with this urgency ordinance, but do so in a manner in which you're limiting the overall footprint. So my direction then would be to work with specific businesses to limit the total use of Leineberg. Is that what I'm hearing?
Or to. at
Or
least,
other
with-
Washington Street venues?
Yeah, and to give the police, their inputs as far as, boundaries and enforceability of the liquor laws.
Okay.
I would like to hear the public input on this, just to get some ideas, because we're only 5 when the public has.
I was hoping to make a comment first.
Oh,
as
go ahead,
far
Mayor
as
Pro Tem.
Direction to staff.
Oh, my gosh.
And that is, one of the issues that you brought up, Mary Rose, was the liability issue. If the governor, and I guess this is for our attorney as well, if the governor extends the allowable time for outside business, serving of food and alcohol, does that then, I don't suppose it releases us of the liability, but it doesn't add to it in the same way? So.
It's not too much of a factor. The biggest factor is going to be the established agreement or arrangement between the city and the businesses.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we can't use that as a cover essentially for liability purposes. We have to find some other arrangement.
Okay.
And that's usually where the requirement is for the indemnification. If they're going to use city streets and locations and public property, these businesses that could be part of the consideration is the indemnification.
So, okay, so to continue, thank you very much.
So
Go ahead.
I was just going to say one final thing, and I didn't mean to after Mayor Pro Tem Plummer, but so when we talk about, as we're gearing up for events, citywide events such as Magic of the Night and so forth, usually we utilize our side streets for these events.
Mm-hmm.
When you have businesses now on these side streets, it makes it more difficult for the city to be able to utilize those streets in terms of events. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that. I think the police chief wants to talk about events as well for the expansion permit part.
Okay.
And
Well, then I
sorry.
will continue when the chief is finished here.
I apologize.
No
My
worries.
lieutenant just reminded me of another. It's more of a permitting issue, but generally when businesses such as bars or restaurants want to have an outdoor event with bands, some sort of music, that requires an event permit through the city and also through ABC. I believe ABC allows up to 3 a year for those generally. Now, under the expansion permits or the catering permits, as they're known through ABC, that's almost it's a way for them to get around that need as far as ABC is concerned. So we might want to consider locally if we still want to require event applications for them to have live music outdoors and such, because it could be covered on the ABC expansion permit, and then if we need to enforce it and tell them they'd have it, they're operating without an event permit, but ABC is allowing them to do that, we should probably clarify what the city wants or expects under those circumstances.
Chief, just to be clear, what we have required previous businesses to have an event permit instead of just having a band under the expansion of that.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. On that particular note, I don't have further questions. I think it might be specific to one business, but there have been some businesses with loud bands disturbing their neighbors. And I think for that type of event, even though I strongly support continued outside restaurant service, I think that for those special events, we should require the special event permit and to come get approval from the city council for those. So I would ask staff to, consistent with the council, of course, to find a way to go forward, as long as it's permitted, to allow the outside dining even along Washington Street if we can do it without too substantially raising our liability issues. And that's my biggest thing for that. If an indemnification for that space covers that, then that's obviously the way to go, because we don't want to. It's just that I feel that the outside dining, especially in Lineberg, and I fully expect it on Bradford, adds so much to the feel and the ambiance. I fully second Councilwoman Such's emotions or about that, and really want to see that going forward. So, we shouldn't be using it as an excuse to favor one business. So at some point, we need those boundaries and limits, but I'd like to see us be able to go forward doing it. It attracts a lot of people and people love it. Our tourists love it. You talk to our merchants and they really support it and feel that it brings extra people in. I am done, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Rochelle.
Sorry, I just had a couple of things. Mary Rose is correct. I'm working on magic and I'm trying to figure out if I get Lineberg Street or not, right? So it does make it difficult, but there are opportunities too, such as that we're working with Thomas, who's going to have a band on Bradford during that night and be a participant with magic. So we usually kind of work with the businesses and try to see if we can get them to sponsor a band or something. So under our encroachment permit process, we do have a process that we'll be bringing, we'll be discussing with you guys as well, and we can do an annual permit with them to allow sidewalk seating, and that includes liability insurance, so it would be an annual thing. But the one thing we need to be, that has to stop once this kind of insanity all goes away, is we cannot let them shrink down the ADA access. The stuff that happened on Bradford Street, those barrels, as soon as we get to that point, we've got to get those off, because you cannot block a whole sidewalk or limit it to where it's only a foot or two wide. So there will be opportunity, but there might be some constraints where we can't do it because we have to provide ADA widths on the sidewalk. So unfortunately, there probably will be some winners and losers, but we can't allow that to happen. COVID was a strange situation and kind of, everybody kind of threw up their hands and let people, kind of make it work as it could. But once they get fully open, we've got to go back and make sure those sidewalks are clear to meet the minimum requirements. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would like to add, even if COVID comes back, that we comply with ADA requirements. That was always very uncomfortable for me. I don't think there need to be barrels so that there's only 1.5 feet left on a sidewalk. That's not acceptable.
Okay, anyone else before I ask for public comment? Okay, so asking for public comment on this item.
If you have any public comment on this item, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or *9 if you're on a phone line.
Holy moly.
And I don't see any public comment.
Okay, well, we'll bring it back to the council. I'd like to give my 2 cents. Oh, for Jim?
no.
No, please, Jim.
No, all right. No, I kind of wanted to wait until public comment, and I was kind of surprised there wasn't any. But no, I like the idea of having outdoor seating, but I think that in the long run, in the long term, but I think that we need to definitely charge, and I think we need to charge once COVID is over. We need to charge a fair market rate. It's city property, and we would be just as if we were a private enterprise renting space. I definitely agree with the ADA compliant. I mean, there's certainly certain areas we can do it because of ADA needs in our sidewalks and stuff. But I don't mind having limited area. When it comes to Lineberg, I think it should be quite limited, actually. I think there needs to be like just a small strip alongside, and the major portion of the street be able to, people can go through on the street level as well as on the sidewalk. I don't know where the gating would come in with ABC, but I would assume that would come in, if not before the end of I don't know with the governor's thing, how that's going to work out. But I would assume after the end of the year, they would go back to normal operations, and there would have to be, if they're selling alcohol outside, there has to be some sort of gating. And I think that would be the responsibility of the restaurant, not the city, to maintain and put up. That would be my feeling. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't mind it continuing it at all in certain areas where it can be, but it can't be a gift, like a gift of public funds. I mean, we have to charge something. I mean, it's our property. It's our collective property. It's not something we can waive fees for. I feel.
So Councilmember Garaventa, am I hearing you correctly in that you're looking at more of an encroachment permit process as opposed to in the actual urgency ordinance process? So the encroachment permit process would require a permit and then a charging of the space.
So if you had an encroachment permit, that would be like for a year or 2 year in perpetuity. How does that work?
I would recommend annually because you're going to want their insurance updated annually.
That sounds, well, I'll wait till you get up to and read.
Yeah, I would recommend it's an annual permit.
Yeah.
So that it's, you can monitor it. If they don't comply, unfortunately, not everybody's a good actor.
Yep.
And that your insurance, you make sure the insurance is current because there is a liability to the city.
Right. Okay. I wasn't sure if this was like an encroachment permit, like on each individual day or time, like we do for parades and stuff. But
I would recommend a
yearly. Yeah, that would be way too much
encroachment
paperwork.
permit.
So,
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, a yearly sounds fine to me.
So out of curiosity, because I guarantee I'll get this call about 30
You're
seconds
going to
after.
ask me how much it is?
Yes.
We only charge $100 right now.
Okay.
I'm not saying that that's what she's going to want us to charge, but that's what we charge right now.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I want to make sure, because Jim, I agree with you. I want to make sure we're real careful, gift of public funds, and we're not favoring one
Seems to me
over another.
there'd be like a square footage
Yeah,
or
so it wouldn't
number
just,
of tables
Yep.
or something like that. And I'm sure other jurisdictions have already.
yeah, so it wouldn't
we don't
just be
reinvent the wheel.
it wouldn't just, so it would be the encroachment permit and then the terms of the actual uses of this, of a city space such as Lineberg, we would have to come to some sort of agreement, whether it be.
Yeah, and I'm not talking
monthly or
about
yearly.
Lineberg. I think Lineberg's a whole different thing. I'm talking about the sidewalks in front of the businesses. Lineberg's. That's a renting of public space.
That's a renting of a public space.
Yeah.
So that would be an entirely different than just allowing those few tables that are in front of Washington. To us, those are two kind of separate beasts at this point.
We want to make sure, and I think I would speak for the council on this, we want to make sure not only do we protect the city, but we protect those businesses also. You know, possibility of ABC coming down hard on them for something they didn't realize they did or didn't do. And, you know, the city, if somebody slips and falls on a sidewalk, you know, while they're eating, it's, you know, so it's a win-win for everybody if we, you know, do what is right.
The other thing to keep in mind is you guys haven't permanently closed Leidenberg Street also. It's only a temporary closure, so you'll have to look at that more of a long-term solution when you look at any leases with anybody. So.
Wow.
So,
That was my 2 cents.
so Mary Rose, did you get enough direction, you believe?
No, I think I'm kind of split, right, Nubia, on whether to just to leave the urgency ordinance as is, or if we want to be able to have some sort of encroachment process, permitted process.
Because the thing is, the restrictions at the state level will lift at some point. We don't know how long it's going to stay in place, but they will eventually go away. So the thought is, if the council wants to continue and to see this long term, what does that look like? And so one of the options we discussed is this encroachment permit approval process.
So it would more or less, you would have you would have an urgency ordinance repeal of the urgency ordinance, and then an encroachment process in which you would allow those businesses to be able to apply for an encroachment permit to be able to utilize those spaces.
So do you need, so it seems to me that we would leave the urgency ordinance in place until there's a process up and ready to go. Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I would support.
Yeah, I would support that too.
Well, the factor there that we have to figure out is whether or not the urgency ordinance will automatically repeal because it's tied to the state of emergency.
Right. And we wouldn't have the encroachment permit system up in time? Is that the concern?
Well, we technically could. I mean, next, next meeting, you could have the repeal and the encroachment permit process.
Right.
I'm not.
Oh, so this is so you're saying that use the encroachment permit process that's already in place?
Yeah.
Going forward.
In lieu of, yes.
In lieu of.
Okay. So basically what you're asking is when to repeal the urgency ordinance?
Yes, it's staff recommendation that you repeal it and allow us to go forth with an encroachment process if the council so chooses to allow those businesses to remain on city sidewalks and city streets.
Okay, sounds good. I like that.
I think we're just looking for a consensus. This will have to be noticed publicly. It's an amendment to the code. It will be through an ordinance.
Right.
Again,
and the urgency ordinance is going to go away at some point anyway.
And that's our
we want to be
concern.
prepared for.
Yeah.
That's our concern, that if any time the emergency declaration goes away, then it automatically, that urgency automatically goes away. And there's no process behind that to allow those businesses, if the council wants them to, allow them to be able to stay open.
Okay. Okay.
So if we rescind this urgency ordinance, is the encroachment process in place or no? It has to be created.
The encroachment permit process is already established. However, as we talked about, generally it's based on a one-time event. We would suggest that you do it on a yearly basis.
Okay.
But there would be a fee associated with that encroachment.
So there
permit.
is work needs to be done on the encroachment process. So you have to.
No, sorry, she's more in the know of encroachment permits than I am.
Well,
We have the option to do encroachment permits right now. We could do for $100 fee. And that would work well for probably Washington Street for the limited space anybody has. We could look at the fee structure, but it is in place. And then we would just look at it as an annual fee.
Okay.
An annual permit that they would have to apply for.
Yeah.
Usually it's a one-time, just like Mary Rose said, but we would look at this as an annual.
So it'd be $100 a year is what you're proposing?
Yeah, unless it changes, right? Unless you guys approve something different. But right now it'd be $100 a year. But again, I would not think that that's what you would want to do on Leidenberg Street. That's my own opinion, but that's a whole different that's a whole different thing.
That's different because that's an actual use of a city park space as opposed to just the sidewalk. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I get.
Because you're talking about maybe a couple tables in front of most of the businesses. Some of them won't even you know, depending on the weather, like you look at Embers down there, people fry on their sidewalks,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it just depends. Some people will be able to take advantage of it, other people won't.
So Diamondback also has tables in front in
Mhm.
addition to Leidenberg. So would they do
Hold it.
$100
do?
for the tables
Yeah.
and then a separate
Oh.
thing for?
Yeah.
I haven't noticed them. Yeah, they fry out there.
No, it's not.
I don't think they use them that often, but they do have
Anybody
them.
on that side of the street in the
Yeah.
summertime.
Okay,
So,
well,
yeah, that would be easy to get that up and running for the Washington Street sidewalk part. We could get that done very quickly.
but I think that we would not want to repeal the emergency ordinance until the other is in place and ready to just go forward.
So it is in place.
It is.
It's in place.
But, I mean, but there's gonna be, well, is it something that's so simple that you'll have negotiated with Frank and Cindy and all that in the space of a couple days or a week? Or do they need some time to get things
I mean,
in order?
we can start notifying businesses that the direction from the council has been to bring back a repeal of urgency ordinance 868, and that going forward with an encroachment permit, whether or not they choose to apply for
Well,
one.
right, there'll be
Yeah.
many that don't, just because
Yeah.
it's more work and probably scarcely worth it. But I don't want to be repealing anything until that's kind of ready.
So
I
it is
mean,
ready.
yeah, I
It's based
understand
on
that.
whether or not the businesses are going to apply
Right,
for it. That's what I would say.
Should. I'm sort of disinclined to repeal it. I mean, maybe I'm not
Well,
thinking it through clearly,
we would have to
but,
bring back a framework of what that looks like on the
Right.
21st of everything.
yeah. Because I'd like a little more time to think about it, obviously, before I'm
I think,
talking in front of God and everybody here, and
I think what we can do is structure it to ensure that if the council repeals the urgency ordinance, to have everything in place for this encroachment process to replace it in essence. So we can tie that with a repeal of the ordinance and bring that all back together.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure
Yeah.
that if you lift it, there's something in place.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I know a lot of our businesses are liking doing the ones that can are like doing it outside, so, yeah.
well, more important to me is that the rest of the public and our visitors love it.
Yep.
It adds so much to just the look and feel when you walk up and down Washington Street, that it benefits the entire city, even though it is also benefiting the restaurants. I mean, you remember how one of the neighbors of Diamondback was a big detractor, and after seeing how it actually ended up working out and being done, the bar was set pretty high, and it's been wonderful, and now he's the biggest booster. So, and he was afraid it would
But
be
I do
just,
think that there still needs to be boundaries on, especially on Leineberg, on what, where the service happens.
and
Yeah, I mean,
don't
well,
think
not
there's
only
any
for the
disagreement.
ABC, but for the rest of the public to use the space.
Indeed.
And we do have businesses that have tables out that have never received a special operations permit. So we need, those are
Yeah.
going to be kind of things
Right.
that we're going to
Start working through the
Yeah.
system.
We've tried to
So-
be, encouraging businesses as much as we can. But yeah.
So, and we also need to bear in mind that even though the last several months haven't been all that rough for a lot of our restaurants, they had a really tough last year and winter. And so I want to give them every opportunity to make a few extra dollars, which we're incidentally doing with the tap room on second Saturday, not the tap room, the Sonora Brewery on second Saturday. And I want our businesses to know that we support them and are trying to coordinate everybody's best interest.
And it needs to be noted too, because I know we'll get this, I don't know if Yeah. It needs to be noted too that we're not making any money off the encroachment permits at $100 a pop. You know, I mean, it would take multitudes of them for the city actually to gain something. So it basically just goes back in to pay for the time that city staff uses to do the paperwork.
Well, it also makes things clearer for the police department.
Exactly.
You know, so that they can do their job as well.
So, Mary Rose, do you have direction enough now, you think?
I think so. I think we have direction.
Excellent.
There's mud.
Okay, so now we come up to council member and department head reports. And I will start with the chiefs. Whichever one would like to go first. Chief of Police, Fire Chief?
I have nothing for tonight, thank you.
Okay. So, Chief New, I do have a question for you. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I have been watching, it's definitely an early fire season.
Yes, it
And
is.
I have people having questions about mowing in the city where there's dry grass. How can they get rid of the grass now if they don't want to, if they can't use a lawnmower?
So the best way is to use a weed eater.
Yes.
And a weed eater with the string, not any type of metal blades on it. So you don't want to hit a rock and cause a spark. You know, lawnmowers, people use riding lawnmowers in an inappropriate way, it seems like, if they have any kind of land. They shouldn't be using it for dry grass and pastures. The riding lawnmowers and push mowers are designed for green grass that is landscaped. And so recommendation would be definitely to use a weed eater with the nylon plastic cord, because then you're for sure not to start a fire.
Excellent, thank you.
And your 100-foot hose.
I'm sorry?
And your 100-foot hose.
And your 100-foot, yeah. And have your clearance of 100
Yeah.
feet. So
Yes.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
I got 200 feet.
I saw the picture on my mother load where down in Copperopolis, somebody was using a riding lawnmower and the riding lawnmower went up too. So,
Oh, absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
so-
it can happen really quick. So absolutely.
thank you. Police Chief Vanderweel.
Nothing further tonight, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, on to our Community Development Director.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the Public Works crew has been out painting all the curbs around town. They have done an excellent job. They've been out, they wrapped it up the end of this week. They'll be done. So they have repainted all the curbs with yellow, red, and they did a great job. They also rebuilt part of the Gabion wall out at Dragoon Gulch, and cleaned up the handicapped area down there. So that was a great project. So they got that done as well. So they've been out working hard and all the heat. So I just want to let you know. And they've also been replacing stop bars. We're using part of the grant money that we got to redo all the stop bars and stuff out of the striping project, out of the SP1 money. So those are getting done as well. So our crew works hard out there.
Thank you. Finance Service Director.
Nothing further tonight, thank you.
Okay. Our esteemed City Attorney, Nubia.
It's so nice to see you all in person.
Yes, it
after
is.
so long. As we noted, my child is now going to be 2 years old, and the last time I saw you, he didn't exist. So
Okay, City Administrator.
Just want to remind the council and the public that tomorrow is the last day to submit your ballots for Measure V. And I know the county clerk recorder has been urging voters to do it as soon as possible, but you can drop off your ballot at any drop box. You can mail it in, and you can also bring it directly to the Tuolumne County Elections Department.
Thank you. Councilmember Sagestrom.
Kind of had to do an emergency catch up looking at my calendar, but just a top line thing since we have other business to go to. I participated in a half-hour call with our assembly person, Frank Bigelow, and talked about state assembly bills that are top priority for small rural cities like Sonora. And the next day, I participated in the Cal Mayor's roundtable, and they had a really interesting speaker named David Crane on policy, which it kind of wakes you up to what politicians do to keep going, which is, taken a lot of donations from businesses and private interests. And, unfortunately, Frank Bigelow wasn't above that, but it was interesting. I also attended the Central Sierra Economic Development Council, and Mono County is now going to become part of that. And they are looking into broadband integration for the area. I did a drought webinar, which was horrifying. And the Tuolumne County Climate Action, the final roundtable for that, which was very interesting. And I believe that their final report will be coming up. I did some of the Adventist Blue Zone meetings. And, that healthy initiative is really interesting, and I hope it works well and the community becomes involved. And the Energy Action Committee met, and I will be getting in touch with Chris about changes to make to the website for the Energy Action Plan.
Thank you. Councilmember Garaventa.
Nothing.
Cool. Okay. Councilmember Such.
Yeah, Social Equity Committee met on the 24th and just working on the resolution. I actually went to the Resiliency Villages property up on Big Hill, and it's an interesting spot. I went to my first Continuum of Care meeting, and boy, is that a steep learning
What
curve.
care?
What?
I didn't catch that.
The Continuum of Care, it's through ATCA.
Oh.
And it's an important meeting because that's where all the funding happens through that.
I keep on being not sure. Are you saying continuing care?
Continuum
Continuum.
of Care.
Oh, okay.
Connie used to go to it. Lots of grants through that. There's a good grant right now for homeless youth. And what else? ATCA Internal Affairs, and they did the most impressive, well, there's a big exodus happening. The most impressive wage review, salary review that I've ever seen. Really, Joe Boris did a really good job on that. I was very impressed. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, like our city administrator, to remind anybody interested in fire to get their ballot in by tomorrow, or at least posted. Otherwise, you won't have much voice in Measure V. And I would also like to bring up again the request that we talk about a voting position for the police chief or his designee on the Social Equity Committee. I think that would be pretty important, at least to discuss it. And I will leave it at that. Wish everybody a good evening once we're done with the mayor.
Okay. Actually, right after this, we'll be adjourning back into closed session. So just for the public's knowledge. So I just want to thank everyone for a great meeting, and it's been actually really enjoyable. I think we're doing a lot of good here in the public, for the public and in front of the public. So with that, I will adjourn to closed session at 7:47 p.m. Okay, so we're back from closed session and direction was given to staff. Anything else I need to add? Okay, so we're adjourning the meeting at 8:33.
Oh, early night.
Everyone have a great night.